And welcome back to day 5, the last in our little mini series for this week. Now for today I thought we would do beans. Beans are something that you don't want to sow too early. Sowing them too early, they're just doomed to fail. They really don't like cold temperatures and they will struggle unless it's a little bit warmer. So I thought now is a good time for me to start sowing all my beans. By the time they've germinated and starting to get to a certain size, it will be mid-May, and by then it would have been absolutely fine anyway. And I'm looking at the weather forecast, it should be absolutely fine for the nighttime temperatures for the next week or two anyway. If you've ever grown beans before, it's a great thing to grow vertically. Now you've got different types of beans. You've got tall beans that will grow exceptionally tall. In fact, some can be over 10 foot tall. You have got dwarf beans, which are much lower to the ground, and they can be very prolific. And you've also got beans that you sow for the actual beans on the inside, not for the pods, plus a whole myriad of other types of beans. Now I'm going to be doing several different varieties this year, and this is my structure. Now it's not the most securest, but it will do for this year because I'm actually thinking of making something much more permanent for my bean structures. But for this year I've got this going alongside one of the new beds. Like I said, I've also included some other teepees in different areas, and I'll just string these around just so those beans have got something to cling on to. But I've got plenty of space on here to put plenty of beans in different areas, and I'm really looking forward to that structural height and those fantastic flowers that they give here on our allotment. And those bean flowers are fantastic for bringing in all those pollinators. So I am going to be spreading a lot of my beans throughout the allotment. Beans are incredibly easy to grow, but the downside to them is slugs and snails and pigeons absolutely love them. The mice will take those seeds if you're not careful, and slugs will demolish those lovely bean plants just as they're about to emerge. They really do get picked on in the animal kingdom. But for us this time of year, we are going to be sowing multiple different varieties. So some of the first ones, which is my tall varieties. Now I've got Isabel. Now this is apparently a really good disease resistant and reliable crop. Now I've grown this a few years ago and it was an exceptionally good amount of beans on here. Plus it's also stringless, which for me I love. So that's the one. The other green bean I'm growing is Mumba. Again, this comes quite highly rated and it's something that I'm actually looking forward to grow. Now apparently the pods reach about 15 centimetres and it's not as vigorous as some of the other varieties, which really is what I want. I don't want everything taken over everything else. So that is one I'm going to be growing. Now, onto my purple beans. I am doing the violet podded beans. Now I'm going to give these a go. I got these mid last year. I quite like the violet podded, the purple podded beans. They're really nice to have that little bit of extra colour on your plate, and they taste great too. So that's another one I'll be growing. Now the other tall variety that I'm growing is for the seeds themselves. Now this is a Belotti bean. Now this one is a climbing bean. We tried to grow Belottis last year, the dwarf variety, and it was just too wet and too close to the ground for them to actually dry off successfully on the plant. And with Belottis, you need them really to dry off on the plant or to harvest the whole plant and hang them upside down somewhere airy, maybe in your greenhouse with the window open, for those pods to dry out and those beans to form that harder shell so they can store. So this year I'm going to try the taller varieties to see if this actually helps somewhat. I'm really hoping so because I love Belottis throughout the winter. added to my stews and my soups and things like that. So I'm really looking forward to trying the taller blotties this year. And then we're on to the dwarf varieties. Now, dwarf varieties can be absolutely amazing, and we had so much green beans from our dwarfs last year. But the downside for me was they grew very close to the ground, so it made it very hard for me to actually harvest. You have to search through the actual beans, and it can be quite dense, and picking all those beans can be quite back-breaking if you have a lot. Now, I have problems with my balance, so leaning over to try and get to those broad beans made it very difficult indeed, and it wasn't an enjoyable experience harvesting those beans. So we are going to grow some beans this year, but I think we're going to grow it in our bathtubs once I can sort out the soil in there. So I'm going to be growing some purple teepees, which is a dwarf variety. Now, I have grown these for a few years on and off, and I actually really do enjoy the taste of these ones, and I'm looking forward to having those again. I've also got some dwarf French beans, so these are much lighter, almost a yellow type of bean. Now, this is the polka. I've not grown these ones before. Well, I think I did probably about 10 years ago, but I haven't done them since. But these will be going out probably again in one of the bathtubs or somewhere raised where it's a little bit easier for us to harvest. Now, I did accidentally at first buy dwarf Belotti beans. Now, I'm not going to do these ones again, so these are going to stay in the seed packet, but I do think I've got somebody I can give these to that will be more than happy to give them a go. So I'll be starting my beans either in modules or this kind of size. Now, I probably will, depending on compost, start them in these. And then I've got less of an issue if the weather does go downhill a little bit. There's a bit more opportunity for them to carry on growing, whereas if the modules, I've still got to pot them up if I need to keep them under cover for that little bit longer. Now, your growing structures can be anything from bamboo teepees to fence panels to grids to whatever your imagination can actually come up with. There is lots and lots of ways to actually grow your beans. Now, like I said, I'm going to grow mine up my scaffolding structure with the chicken wire for this year. But again, I'm going to be stringing up some teepees of bamboo to grow in different areas. Now, when I do that, I'm just going to put string around it in different areas, just so those beans have got something to climb up. Now, one of the other things I'll be growing this year is my good old runner beans. Now, if you watch previous videos, you would have seen how good our runner beans were. Now, we had 2 lots of teepees, I think it was off the top of my head, and there was multiple plants at each leg. Now, the one with all the wind that we had last year actually fell down, but it still produced an awful lot of runner beans off of that one. Now, this year I probably will build maybe something a little bit stronger for my runner beans, but I'll have to wait and see what other kind of things I've got lying around that I can make something out of for it. But I've saved an awful lot of seed from last year to grow those runner beans again for this year. So hopefully those seeds will germinate very quickly. So guys, what are you growing bean-wise? Have you started yours yet? Are they already on your windowsill, happily growing away? Or are you yet to sow? I'm glad I waited to a certain degree this year because the weather hasn't been the greatest, and the space that I have at home, I don't think they would have survived anyway. But let me know in the comments, guys, what varieties and what good ways that you grow. And let me know what you found that's been best for growing and eating. Just let me know in the comments, guys. Again, I do really appreciate all the comments that I get on the videos.